your mic in front of your mouth.
Okay. Hello and welcome to another episode on the Cultivita channel. Today we are going to talk about planning, and hopefully this is streaming. This is still one of our first attempts in reference to streaming, so we should be on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Hopefully, if not, we'll post it later. And so today I wanted to talk about planning because it's one of those things where, for me, I always try to promote, planning and being strategic, and, that sometimes we're in a bad position and a bad place, but that we can get ourselves out of it by slowly doing things to get ourselves out of that hole. But the question's always, well, how much of that? If it's saving, like, how much should I save? The maximum amount? If it's planning, how much time should I plan? And I think for me, depends. It depends what you're doing. If it's something really important, then you got to give yourself a lot more time. I would suggest that no matter what, that you give yourself a timer, I guess, so that if it's a day, if it's an hour, it's 5 minutes, but the moment it's done, whatever you've given yourself, then you go do it, because that's the most important part to do. Planning is great, but if you spend all your time planning and you don't actually do anything, then it's not so good. But in thinking about this, because I was just trying to figure out what the most important part about planning is, and I would say is the why. Because if you don't know why you're planning, why it's important, then what's the point of it? The whole point, I think, is like, if you're doing X, why is it important? What do you want to get out of it? And then planning to make sure you get that, right? Because it'd be silly to do something and then not get the thing you wanted, right? If you're going to the grocery store for butter, which has happened, and then you come back and you don't have butter, then it's kind of silly, right? So like the planning, making the list, it's to make sure you get the butter, right? So like, what's the point? Right. Keeping that in mind, I think that's really important. But here with me, I have Juliet, and I wanted to ask Juliet, like, what in your life have you planned the most for, and how did it go?
So when I hear this question, I think about, there's so many things that I have planned for, and the first thing that I thought of is, well, did it really happen? And as you're thinking about the why, like, did I get to the why? Does that count as a good example? But I think the first thing that comes to mind, which is just a really big, important thing, was like planning my family. So like planning to have a kid, have a child, and then like once that was decided, and then getting pregnant. And so then the idea of like, okay, planning, this is a big thing. This is important to plan. There's an endless number of things to think about, to plan for. Everything is new and exciting and sometimes terrifying. So just thinking about all these things. So having a timeline, so you have a very clear timeline in that scenario. And I think that helps for me a lot too, because I could, come up with ideas and plan forever, but having that cut off. And then,
you mean the 9 months, right?
Yes, yeah. Exactly. The 9 months, right? You have this time. And having things planned, a birth plan, the things for the baby, all of these things, what we're going to do in the very beginning, all of the items that we want to have. But then also, sometimes I think the biggest lesson about the planning for this is, yes, it's important to have the big things clear, to know what are the priorities for me. So it's like, this is the kind of birth that I want. This is the, setup that I want when bringing baby home. And making decisions together, and then also being able to realize there's a limited amount of control, and like letting go of the plan when you have no other choice. And so I think for me, that was the scenario. It wasn't quite a full 9 months. So just kind of being ready with what you have ready and running with it, because sometimes you just do the best you can with the plan that you have. And that's what I ended up having to do. So I was grateful. I was reflecting on this and grateful that I did all of the planning that I had done. But the biggest learning was, and it doesn't always go to plan. So you have to be able to be flexible and grateful for the planning you have, and then able to adjust.
I think you bring a really good point that what people don't realize sometimes that planning is important to get you to jump, right?
Mm.
And so a lot of times we go into a situation and like we're gonna go into a party, we're gonna be social, we're gonna go to a networking event, let's say. I deal with mentees and stuff, and that's a big thing for them. It's huge, right? And they're so nervous, they have anxiety, they have stress and all this stuff. And I tell them plan this, plan that. But I think so much of it is sometimes just a distraction to get you to not overthink it and get you to go, right? So you feel okay with that, right? It's like, you do your check. Okay, I got my parachute, I got all this stuff. And then you get on the plane maybe, right? If that's what you need to get on the plane. And so I think you bring a really good point that sometimes the planning is just to get you to that point of jumping, a point to get there. When that timer goes off, that planning was just for you to feel like you could then do, right, or try really. And so I think it's really, really important for us to do. And planning isn't one of those things where it's to be better, to be perfect. It's to get you to do it in so many ways. And I think the why is important still, because when things happen, like you said, you have to let go. And I think at that point you have to pivot. But sometimes when you plan, maybe you plan worst case scenario, you plan most likely scenario, maybe you pass best case scenario. So maybe something changes and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to let go of that. But you can let go of it more easily when you understand why you're doing it. Like for having a kid, maybe you just want that experience, right? Period. And that's okay. And so when you go in there and something, the stuff hits the fan and you got to let go of that, instead of freaking out and panicking because it's changed, you understand that, wait, I have the kid, like I'm okay, right? And I think that the why is also important in that aspect. So I think it's all interconnected. But it brings up the question of like the future and how, I don't know about you, but for me, being a perfectionist and a bit of a control freak, I want to spend so much time in the future. It's why I love doing research. If you know me, you'll know that I do a ton of, it doesn't matter if I'm buying a blow dryer or a vacuum. Like I will research to the point that I'll read companies and figure out how long they've been and what warranties and what their financial, situation is, to know if the company is good, if they're putting not just a good product, but if they're going to be there later to stand behind their product. And so many times it's just to get me to do that purchase. I think I have this, you could call it being frugal, but I have this issue about spending money, and for me doing the research gets me to spend the money because it's a lot of money,
right.
For somebody who, especially for me who grew up relatively poor, and spending hundreds of dollars on an appliance is big. And so doing the research allows me to then feel, okay, I'm giving my money to something that will last, that it's good, that most likely will be work out. But sometimes I get it and it breaks and it's poo-poo. And then, but then I'm okay with that, right? Because I'm like, well, it got me to, I needed to do my laundry, and I did my laundry for a while. I got to buy another one and maybe learn from that. And I guess it's, one of the things here is about balance. And I think that
Yes.
what we have to remember, I think the most important thing about planning is that it's about now. So understand that you're planning because you like it, you want to do it and enjoy it, right? I enjoy doing research. I enjoy that aspect of, that time before that I do the strategy. Like if I'm going to go somewhere and do something, that's exciting to me, even though, like you said, sometimes we just throw it out the window. But I think that when you throw that out the window and you let go, you learn from that, right? And that's a little bit of the past. I guess what I'm trying to say is the balance is, most of it should be here in the present. And that doesn't mean that it's not connected to the future. When you think of the future and planning, you're actually enjoying that process. So you're still here in the now. And when you fail or, fall on your face and you learn from it, you're still here in the now, right? So in a way, the past and the future are grounded in today because that's what you're doing now. So in other words, a lot of people are like, what? I got to plan for my future. I got to do that. And you're telling me to be in the now. How in the heck am I supposed to do that? And when you piece it all together, you are in the now because you're enjoying the planning. You're enjoying the learning from that failure. So it's about balance. And have you had any difficulty with planning of this future, present, and past?
Yes, I think also I'm just using the perspective of maybe someone who doesn't think they like planning, right? Because if you're saying, oh, well, the now enjoyment is because you like planning. And if you'd asked me, let's say 5 years ago, I probably would have said, oh, no, that's not fun, right? The planning part, that's the sort of boring part. Then it's all predictable and scripted, and especially things that we're, planning for fun or socializing. But I think if I got into a pattern of realizing, so I think one nice example is like doing some weekly planning for what's coming up this week, and then let's say maybe the next month. And I used to think, let's say for social engagements, having friends over or going out and doing things, and I used to think like that makes it not fun because then it's not spontaneous, it's not living in the moment. But it is. I enjoy the planning now because I see the fruit of the effort. So then I think it's a positive feedback.
Yeah. It's like the whistle on the dog.
Exactly. It was a bit of a grind in the beginning, to be honest. A little bit painful to feel like I'm spending my weekend time planning for future weekends. I should be living my weekend. But then every future weekend, I get to do the things that I want to do. Of course, not everything exactly as I plan, but it allows me to have that dinner with friends, or make sure that I get to spend that time with my child, and be intentional because I'm not distracted trying to figure out what's happening next in the day. I already have it planned. So it isn't always, I love planning. It doesn't mean that you have to be a planner or a researcher, but then you can end up doing it a bit, getting the positive reinforcement, and then actually enjoying the planning part too.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, and I'm going to bring in the book because I think that many times when we want to do planning, we think it's something we have to do. But in reality, you can plan anything you want. Like you said, you can plan fun time. Right. You can plan reading, and this is goes with the book because you take care of yourself. And it might seem selfish, but if you run out of patience with your kid, you're not really enjoying that, and neither are they.
No,
right?
They know.
So if you spend some time alone to ground yourself, to maybe process whatever happened at work, then you're going to be in a much better place in reference to being at that social networking event. Even if it's something you don't like, you're going to probably perform better if you take care of yourself. And that also includes planning, because the planning is about, and even to the extent of planning space. I'm a big proponent of planning to do nothing, planning space just to think. And you could call it strategic time if you have difficulty booking or scheduling blank space. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it recapping. You can call it reflection. You can call it strategic thinking. But it's about giving you space. We've talked about this, about like shower time, to be able to think and piece things together. And that's where the big, connectors come in. That's where the big ideas come in. But if you don't schedule it, if you don't plan for that, and it could be something silly where you don't spend the right amount of time and you say, oh, I'm going to do this and this. And that you never, like swimming, right? For me, it's not 20 minutes or 30 minutes of swimming.
Oh, no.
You got to change. You have to get to the pool. You then have to rinse. You have to then unrinse all the chlorine. You got to rinse all your stuff out. And then you got to most likely shower, right? Because you got chlorine all over you. I mean, some people don't, but I'm just saying for me, that's a whole process. So I got to plan. When I plan for it, I got to plan potentially, 50 minutes.
Right. It's not just a 20-minute swim in your schedule. No, I think part of what I also come to is thinking about, well, I have this much time. I want to do all the things. And this is where I struggle too with the planning, is because if I force myself to be realistic about what time it takes, giving myself some of that space so I'm not running around stressed about timing, I have to acknowledge and be honest with myself that I am not going to be able to do all of those things at the same time or in the same day. And so I think that's part of why I also get frustrated or maybe push back with planning, taking the time to plan, because then I have to come to terms with what's realistic that I can do, prioritize, and that means I have to ask why. So why do I want to do this? Why is this something I'm planning for? Because I want to be able to spend time in this way. Because ultimately it's about time. That's the resource. Like, how do I want to spend my time and energy? And if you are really clear about why, which isn't always the case, I have to be honest, sometimes I say, oh, well, I want to do that. okay, great, put it in the plan, but why? And being able to have the space to ask why. And then sometimes you need a little assistance. Like what I do to have that blank space, especially in today's world where people are busy, there's so much information coming in. For me, if I have a phone or screen or device, it's so hard to do. Going for a walk, but then oftentimes there's, plugging in some way. But I write. And for me, that forces me, if it's pen and paper, nothing else. And then I usually get into it. But like that forces me to just be me, the pen and the paper, and nothing else. And I think that some people can just sit and be thinking, but that's also hard to do too.
Yeah, I think that pen and paper is what I usually recommend for people. I will say there are some people who can do it like on a tablet and like a digital pen. I will say that in the beginning that helped me a lot. I now don't. I find it. I don't know. I find sometimes that I just rush. It's a lot. And I've gotten better. I think in the beginning I was like, there's too much. I got to juggle it all, right? And then now it's different. It reminds me, everything we've talked about this in a different setting, but about the sushi conveyor belt. If you're familiar, you go to a restaurant and you have like sushi coming around. And now these ideas are just like, no, thank you. No, thank you. That's the perfectionist me. That's not a good time right now for the perfectionist me. This is controlling me. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. And then be like, oh, this is good. This is different. I don't know the joyous me. I don't know I don't know, a positive me. I feel like I'm very grounded in being realistic, and but why not be positive and look at things from a different perspective, whatever that idea is. It's like saying I want to do something, and for me I have a lot of like, what if this happened, what if this happened, and all bad. But then one comes down and we're like, what if you win, right? And you're like, ooh, that's kind of cool. And then that's kind of excited. Yeah. And then that's actually better motivating. You'd be like, well, now that I have all this stuff, let me go back and pick up those pieces. How can I avoid these losses? And how can I make it more likely for this win? And so it's looking at things from a bigger picture. And for me, the writing kind of gets in the way because there's just so much. And so much of it just, like you said, you let go of it.
Right.
It's only the worst case scenario.
And I think it depends because sometimes the writing is just to get things flowing and give yourself that space. For me, it's writing that I have in my mind, I'll come back to this and read this, but I don't because that's not really the purpose. It's not like writing for, a novel I'm putting together or a project I need to refer to the notes. It's writing as a tool to give myself that space and time. And so it depends. I mean, everyone's different, but the other thing I was thinking while you were explaining the sushi belt was also like how you deal with shifting from, for some people it's like the anxiety of all the things, right? Oh, all of these things are coming. Maybe I want it, maybe I don't, but it's in front of me. Now I have to pick it up and do something with it. And so that can feel overwhelming for all the different planning that needs to happen. How am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? But being able to take that space and say, no, not this, ask the why, prioritize, let it go by on the conveyor belt if that's what you decide. But then shifting it to excitement. So instead of the like anxiety, it can go into the system. Some things get left, some things get taken, things are prioritized, and then there's excitement towards what there is actually in the plan, as opposed to anxiety of the insane quantity of things that are coming through.
I think that one of the things that's happening with planning is habit building. And I think we've touched on it a little bit. And, in reference to what you're talking about, you get better at letting go. You get better at dealing with the whole, onslaught of ideas or just thoughts. But being able to, I guess... Oh, I lost my frame of thought. This is live. What was I going to say? So I was saying about I went off on a train and then I was like, no, don't go off. You're talking. And then I tried to come back and then I lost it.
It's okay. Planning all the different things, the onslaught of thoughts.
Oh, the habit building. No, yeah.
Yes.
So the habit building in reference to when you plan things, because planning becomes a habit, you get better and you don't need the paper, or maybe you need more paper or whatever the thing is. But planning can become a habit is what I was trying to get at.
Yes.
And when you do that, it becomes easier and you can plan better and see more. Remember, it's maybe you plan very small and then you plan bigger and then you can see bigger pieces, and then you can get to the point where you don't need a rating. Maybe you can not get so overwhelmed and let go of stuff. So it's one of those things where it gets easier with time. I will say that you'll find bigger problems, and then it's like a video game where you get leveled up, but then the floors get harder.
Right.
So there is that. But planning, I think, is one of those things where I can't help but address I don't have time for it. And I will say that if you never have time to plan, then you will always be where you're at. Most likely. I mean, I guess you can get lucky, but most likely you will continue being in an environment that you don't have control over. And it's easier to be a victim in those environments. And so planning, like you said, usually doesn't happen. But I think that the planning allows us to try, and that trying changes our dynamic. It changes us. It changes our environment. It changes everything. And that is extremely important, because from a macro way, it lets you take control of your life. Maybe you're in a really bad place, and so it's very, very small, but over time, as a habit, you really start to be where you want to be. And you also realize that those things that you were planning for, your whys, aren't that important. You know, instead of being like, I wish I had this much, or I wish I had that. When you start planning, you end up start getting those things, and you realize, oh, I don't really care about that stuff that much. And I think that planning is really, really amazing in that sense, because it lets us, you know, the roots of it extend so many different places, to the now, to the why, to letting go, to making it a habit, to changing our environment, to not being a victim, to just living the life we want to live, and to taking care of ourselves. And all those things are really important. But it's different for everybody. So don't let, you know, what we're saying limit you. What I would like is for you to try the different things we've been saying, and then figure out what works for you. And the other thing is also keep in mind that sometimes it doesn't always work for everything, right? Because you might work very well, but you're not one-dimensional. There's many dimensions to you. And maybe when you're in a social environment, there's different things that'll help you plan and be more successful there, versus being by yourself and focusing on work or whatever you're trying to do in that situation. I think that's a good place to end. Or do you have anything else to add, or anything else that came to mind?
Yeah, one thing came to mind, because I realized I said, you know, I don't use a screen, but I also, in many ways, it's the paper to help me think and have the space. But I also am one of the kinds of people, if it's not in my calendar, then it may not happen. So I do also, you know, transfer the thinking, the planning into the tool that I use. And so it shouldn't be tool driven, but the tool should be helpful for getting to what you need. Because I think we talk very abstract, but also thinking like putting it into the calendar may be what you need to do. So yes, that involves a little bit of time with a device.
Yeah, I think, tools are very important. So try something different when you're planning, and figure out what tools work for you. Are you a person thinking about carpentry? Do you use screws? Do you use nails? Nothing wrong with it, just different. And each person has their preferences, so figure out what works for you in reference to using a drill or using a hammer. And it's hard. I will say that it is difficult, because it's a lot easier to let things happen to you. And so if anything, I'd like everyone, you know, to try to plan to do something today or tomorrow, whatever you can. And even if it's just 2 minutes, set a 2-minute timer and plan for tomorrow. Something that helps me is imagining you doing that thing. If you're more of a person who learns by doing or seeing, I guess, you kind of can do it in your mind. And there is some evidence that this actually helps you. It's helped people, like even with muscle growth. People visualize themselves doing exercise and their muscles will grow. So there's something to be said. You visualize yourself walking onto the stage and those type of things that can help a lot of people. So you can take baby steps, is what I'm trying to say. So no matter how small it is, no matter how little time you have, plan a little bit. And it's going to most likely not be great, but stick with it, and I think over time you're gonna get better. It's gonna get better. You're gonna feel better, and all those things will grow. And just whatever works for you. Don't judge yourself either, because I think that's a big thing. You're like, whoa, this is pointless. Why am I doing it? This has failed. About so it's not worth planning for it. Give yourself at least a month, I would say, if you're just doing 2 minutes of planning and trying to see how it works. And sometimes it just makes it better to just be like, well, that's gonna suck. I'm gonna plan to do this. I'm gonna plan to do that to lessen the sucking, and that's okay. Anything else?
No.
All right, so we'll end it there. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was helpful for you in planning and thinking about things. If you have any thoughts, please comment. If you have any ideas for us to talk about, please put those as well. We love ideas. And if you want more information, please check out the book, The Selfish Guide to Fulfillment, Meaning, and Purpose, or the website, coltonvita.com, or all the social media, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and such. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and stay true to you. Thanks for watching.